Sorry, I'm a tiny bit late, guys. I had a bit of drama setting up the video there. Welcome to the third episode of Rugby League Coach Live. Sorry, I wasn't with you last week. I'll explain that a little bit more a little bit later. Basically, we're going to be every Wednesday. There are some occasions when I can't do Wednesdays. I will let you know in good time, so please don't worry about that. The main thing you need to know, though, is I will endeavour to do this weekly and be there to listen to you. The key thing, I guess, I want you all to know about this is that I feel that so many people get labelled as keyboard warriors. And when I look at the comments in my particular feed, I would say 80% of them, 90% of them are really pertinent, really good, really strong, really erudite. There's only 5-10% of people that are idiots, right? I want to give that 90%, and I'm just pulling figures out of my backside here. I want to give that 90% a bit more of a voice, because if I can read out some of your comments on here, it gives them a bit more legitimacy. It means that I'm looking at them and feel they are good enough to carry over, and it also gives you a chance to comment live on what people are saying, and you can also get to know my response live as well and look me in the face if you like. I want people in community rugby league to be heard because you literally don't have a voice. You have keyboards where you can make comments on social media, but one thing I've noticed in rugby league lately, particularly in the community game, particularly with local leagues, I don't know how often they read those comments and take them into account. I really don't, because I think they get labelled as keyboard warriors. I'm not criticising anyone here. I'm just trying to transcend the issue a little bit. So my idea with this is I want you to get heard. People who work in our junior clubs, our A-grade clubs, amateur clubs in England, all those who feel not too on side, if you like, or supported by the people who run in your area. Now, the other thing too is there are some key issues that I will constantly bring up. For example, I'm a massive believer that the AFL is coming for rugby league in a big way, and I think they possibly have taken over in a lot of areas. I've got another example of that today. Every week I will bring up an AFL is coming for us issue. The other thing is I'm not a massive fan of the old development fees. And the key thing with all this is I don't just want to hear one side. I don't just want to be critical. I want to hear people who support them as well, and let's have some real good, strong debate about it all. But basically, every week, if you put comments on the social media, unless you don't want to, I will mention some of them on live, and I've tried to go through the comments that have the most likes, the most shares, the most, those emojis that you get underneath each one, the love heart or the shock or anything that's had the most of those, I've tried to reproduce here. So please let me know if you've got a problem with that. Let me give you an example of some of the things that I get. Raymond Bartley wrote, with the 18th man being on the sideline in case of an illegal HIA, that's head injury assessment, I feel that player should be used as a replacement for all HIAs instead of the starting 17. That way he can get some game time as well. So that's a real interesting comment, a real interesting thought. And then Bob Diner has replied with the HIA would get more exploited than it does now. All right, so that just shows you some of the discourse that I read every day on the Rugby League Coach socials. Alyssa Shaw, I am more so our junior players, like in under 12s, 11s, 10s, we want them to stick around until they're 17 and 18 and longer, get back to basics with our younger players, keep them keen and within the club. So there's other comments I'm going to mention about that and the junior game and players and whatnot a little bit later. Alyssa, thanks for that comment. And then this just gives you some of the idea I want to get. Greg Stevens, 10 minutes ago. Peter Babel, he's talking about Peter Badel. I think the way he's written it says Babel, but I think he means Babel. Peter Babel, gee, you write some crap if you think Walter's got them back on track. If it wasn't for two players they bought in, they would be down the bottom of the ladder. Greg is responding to a post I made about the Broncos being back on track and basically criticising the media who want to try and get him sacked. But Greg's, I think, put those quotes to Peter Babel when he's talking about the Broncos. So, no, it was me who said that, Greg. So maybe it's me I need to have a go at that. And I'd love to see if you make another comment, and I'm more than happy to share that discourse with you. So yeah, so we're going to talk about the Broncos a little bit later on, and the Dragons, because I've got loads of your comments to read out this week. If you do want to send in comments, the comments are open and live on this live. You can also email me at admin@rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. I've got that email open there. Only 2 weeks until the school holidays. I'll be doing the Aim Higher Roadshow, 5 venues in Brisbane, 1 in Sydney, 1 in Melbourne, and they all look like they're going to be records, so get in quick. If you need any more information, post a comment or send an email to that address, and I will give you everything you need with discounts for club members. Okay. So like I said earlier, sorry about last week, I was in Mornington Island. For those who don't know where Mornington Island, it's basically there on the map, right? So you have to go to Cairns, and then you go across to Normanton, and then across to Mornington Island. So it's off the mainland. So of course, anything off the mainland has its own logistical issues, if you like, when it comes to supplies of various things you can imagine. When I got off the plane in Mornington Island, the first thing I saw were 3 horses walking down the street, and I'm sure that somebody was putting a bet on. I really am, because Aussies do love a bet, don't they? Anyway, I digress. The reason I bring this up today, number one, I'm sorry that I didn't get to the live last week. I just couldn't secure a good enough internet connection to make sure the quality of the live was good enough. I reckon I'd have been cutting out every 2 minutes. Plus, I'm with Optus, and they don't have coverage there, so it was a nightmare the minute I got there trying to stay connected. Anyway, the whole week had a really profound effect on me in so many ways. I'm not going to get political with regards to anything, but what I am going to say is that I am more steadfast in my belief that these people that comment that we don't have enough talent to go around in the NRL are actually not opening their eyes, and they're not going to places like Mornington Island. Let me give you a good example. If you're in a school, working in a school in Brisbane or Sydney, the percentage of kids in a PE class that are good sports people these days seems to be shrinking all the time. Do you remember when people of my age and a bit older were younger, there tended to be quite a lot of people who were quite good at sport? Well, it seems to be less and less, because there's more kids spend more time on devices now and doing less sport. That's another argument for another day. Well, up on Mornington Island, I can promise you that the ratio of athletic kids is an awful lot higher, to the point where nearly everybody there had athletic talent, even if they weren't superb at sport. And their knowledge of rugby league and their love of rugby league is fantastic. And I can honestly tell you, I reckon I saw a few players, students, who could play at a higher level of rugby league one day. And they might never get the chance because the game doesn't look at them. I will tell you this, that the AFL is looking at those kids, and in other various areas, the people in Mornington Island were telling me the AFL have been there in a big way and are funding it, and soccer has been up there too. Guess what Rugby League has done? My mate Sione made a comment already talking about the AFL. Morning, mate. AFL pull a crowd of 50,000 plus for a game during the week. There was actually a game the other week, Sione, where there was 80,000 and the league equivalent had something like 15. So, yeah, I mean, look, we can do this every week, lad. You know, we are getting taken over. If we're not getting taken over, we've been taken over, and we're possibly asleep at the wheel. The next thing I want to talk about now, and somebody's made a bit of a dig at me this week about being open like this, and I guess, for want of a better term, a little bit, I'm not towing the party line, am I? I'm an independent, and I represent you, and I represent the people who are on this page. I represent the people who are fans of the game. I represent people who are players and coaches in the game, the community game. I don't own the game. They don't own the game. The NRL don't own the game. Blah, 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 blah. We all own the game. We are all stakeholders. Okay? And that is my rationale. And if people can't take a little bit of criticism and critical discourse, then they are in the wrong job and they're in the wrong place. As long as things don't get personal, as long as individuals aren't called out and actions are called out, actions rather than the actors, then and the actresses, then this kind of discourse should be fine. So guess what? I'm doubling down on it. A lot of our local league administrations are on a power trip. I want to read something out from a 16-year-old. What's happening in this area is that somebody else is trying to organise something else. So I'm not going to I'm not going to release any names of anybody, right? Because they've not given me that permission yet. But I'm going to paint a picture to you of an organisation that's trying to organise something in rugby league because they see a gap, because our game isn't producing that product, and they are basically being stopped by the powers that be. Hey guys, myself and another lad have just been informed that your tournaments are not sanctioned by meaning that if an injury is to occur, we can be held liable for it and legal action can be taken against us, and we will not be protected against such actions at all by your committee. It has also been brought to our attention that since you are not sanctioned by that we can be fined by the RL, and RL, and that is 3 different competitions, being able to fine up to $10,000 each, and also being able to suspend us from playing. If you would like to explain this further, please do. So that's from a 16-year-old. So let me just paint the picture. There's a lot of people in rugby league who see things could be better, because for whatever reason, the powers that be, and I'm not having a go at any particular, I'm just saying the game doesn't produce them. And an idea might be competition in an area. I do remember that the Queensland Pacific Islander Carnivals in their early days got an awful lot of criticism from the powers that be because they didn't organise them, and there was a lot of resistance very early on. That seems to have changed now. But a lot of these things happen because our game doesn't provide, because it doesn't have enough money to provide. So other people try and fill the gaps. I remember in Europe, somebody tried to organise a tournament, Euro 13s, and all he got was criticism. Whether that was granted or not is another matter, but people's automatic footing was to criticise, try and cut it down. Cut the tree down, cut the tree down, cut the tree down. The amount of times I've had my tree cut down over the last 4 years of running this company, if I had $1 for every time, I'd already be a millionaire. And I'd love to know how much of that is because I'm an Englishman operating in Australia. There's a lot of that goes on. Please don't doubt that. So what's happening here is somebody else is trying to organise something else, and the powers that be are just coming in with, we'll fine you, and this, that, and the other threats, rather than going, it's not a bad idea this, how can we work with them? So what the powers that be probably need to do a little bit is subcontract a little bit to people who've got ideas, put them out to tender, subcontract them, cede a little bit of control. And that's what I mean about a power trip. It's like they're worried that they're going to lose some kind of control over the game. And remember, they don't own the game, you don't own the game, we own the game. Okay? We're all stakeholders. I want to talk about another league that has overseen a massive and drastic dwindling in its playing numbers. Playing staff and coaching staff are leaving this area in droves to get better RL opportunities. They're leaving their hometown, their home city. They also have a disdain for outsiders in juniors and seniors, have their favourite clubs and people. They have alienated so many volunteers that love and support for them is at an all-time low. Again, I'm not going to name the area. People might be able to guess, might not, I don't know. You can probably apply that to 100 areas in a game. But again, it all comes down to power and ego. Remember, it's not your game, it's not my game, it's our game. And that goes to anyone in rugby league. Beck Haskins from Bundy, or as I prefer to call her, Beck from Bundy. She tends to agree that something's not right. Grassroots footy has been forgotten about. It should be all about the kids playing footy. Instead, it's about the politics and how much money the big heads can make. Advertising or exploiting a young player in the local rag as the next big thing. What crap. How about we support these young players to enjoy their footy and teach them how to become a great person on and off the field, physically and mentally? Volunteers give up so many hours and so much behind the scenes work to see the enjoyment the kids get out of playing football, and this has all been forgotten, and in brackets just put for the love of the game. No money, no time, no effort is given from anyone that actually has the power to do anything. It is quite disgusting that regional areas don't get the opportunity and support they need. Touche. Another thing we probably need to talk about in the community game as well is the cost of sport. I was driving around yesterday and I heard on the ABC, yes, I do sometimes listen to the ABC, that the cost of sport has gone up something like 30% across the board over the last few years. How many of you out there are paying a bit more for rego for your kids, you're actually getting less product, so you're getting less game time? So I've been on record this year as saying some of the competitions in South East Queensland seem shorter than ever, and that can be due to acts of God such as weather or lockdown or something like that, natural disaster type things. And Darren King comments the season is too short, the kids want to play here and longer in the season. Parents agree. Darren, I agree too. I've got Tim McIntyre watching here. He's from the NRL. If you've got any comments on this, Tim, please put them forward. You know I love you, mate, so I would definitely share whatever you say in defence of anything. But it's clear to me that there's less product. Do you know that most insurance companies offer cover for 12 months? Right? So when you're paying your rego, and that will include insurances, how many of your kids are playing for 12 months? Because last time I checked, the season lasts about 5-6 months. So did you know that? You're paying insurance for 12 months, 12 months cover, but your season might only last for 5. Morning, Tim, thanks for responding. That when I heard that insurances only cover 12 months and we only play 6-ish, I was shocked. That's actually a fundamental piss take. Robbie Keenan says Sunshine Coast under 10s 12 games, 4 to 5 washed out this season, and the league didn't make the effort to make them up. Look, I think, Robbie, obviously you're right, and sorry, I'm just replying to someone. Start watching. Johnny, start watching. Johnny Doe, start watching, and I think I can invite you. That's the way to do it. I'm trying to get a guest on. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, we've definitely lost some games. And I think in the third year of the kids having so many dramas, we've had 2 years of COVID lockdown and COVID faffing around. This year we had rain. I think we all would have liked a bit more of an effort from the games administrations to play more games somehow. You know, whether it be some kind of gala day scenario. Tim, if you're still watching, it'd be great if you could give us your take on that kind of thing. Because the seasons definitely seem to finish earlier. Most people were talking anecdotally saying, well, we had finals this time last year, but now we've got nothing. What is the reason for that? Why has that happened? Sorry, I got a bit sidetracked there. Sione, my mates some play soccer and their washed out games were made up by playing during the week. Well, that's an obvious thing too. If you've got any comments on any of that type of thing in the community, please start typing them in. I'm looking on my phone, that's why I get distracted sometimes. I need a team with me or something. And I will try and read them out. I'm trying to get the Ipswich guys on again, and basically some people, when they watch Johnny, it gives me a chance to invite them to come on, but for some reason I can't see you. So I think that's something to do with your privacy settings. So see if you can change something there. Lena, Melbourne Victoria Juniors only had 14 rounds, including one bye. They only played 13 weeks. So have a look at your insurance, Lena, and see what you're paying, and then work out how much you're paying and divvy that up with your 13 games, and let's see how much you are paying. A sport would be a lot more affordable if there was some kind of tax break for insurers to insure sport. Now, the other thing, I was talking about the issue earlier about other people trying to organise things. There are only a couple of companies, I believe, that sponsor sport, so we probably need to make that a little bit more interesting, so there's not a monopoly on it. So is there an opportunity where we can encourage more insurance companies to get involved with rugby league, because obviously it's a high impact sport? Okay, I'm going to talk about other issues while my guest tries to work out how to get on live again. This is 2 weeks on the trot. At least they can coach rugby league. Did you know that the NRL are talking of having a full reserve grade competition as soon as next year? So what I mean by that is that teams like Brisbane Broncos, Gold Coast Titans, North Queensland Cowboys, maybe the Redcliffe Dolphins would have to put a reserve grade team in. So I've got this from people involved in the Queensland Cup, and clubs are apparently all very worried, because what will happen is, especially in a short time, if there's a short turnaround, the players, there's not much time to get many more players, is there? A lot of people are getting the roster sorted for next year already. So what are the chances that there will be new players come on board next year? So there's a big push for a reserve grade next year. Tell me what you think about that. And apparently a lot of Queensland Cup clubs are worried about it, and the person who told me about this is worried that the talks are too late. What do you think about an NRL reserve grade? Matt Lester, you've said reserve grade would be a great idea. Jamie Henselwood, you said national reserve grade will kill all the Q Cup clubs. You see, Johnny Dore, I can see people are watching here. Why can't I see you? Shane Harris, come on, pull your finger out. Let's see what you can come up with. You're running out of time. I want to talk about a little bit about the commercialisation of the sport. So I think somewhere along the line, we have lost the community feel of rugby league. So, the old movie with Matthew Johns and Matt Nabelin about Newtown Jets, and the player used to go into the pub and he'd be held accountable basically to all the people in the pub because he was in the area, and they all said, "Oh, wow, what are you doing? What were you doing last Saturday on the field? And what are you going to do this week? We need to beat these," and blah, 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 blah. I think part of the problems with a lot of these teams that aren't performing very well in the last few weeks of the season is because we've lost that connection to the community. I've said this before and I'll say it again. There's a lot of people paying an awful lot of money that they shouldn't really be able to afford, but they prioritise rugby league so much to be involved in our game, but particularly to follow their NRL team. And every player who pulls on a jersey, every player that pulls on a jersey at any club has a duty to people in their community that they represent. There was one comment on my social media from a lady that got largely ignored, but I think it's the comment of the year. You know the whole fiasco around Manly and their Pride jersey? She basically said, and I'm not going to name her because I don't want to show her up, right? That there's nothing more inclusive than the traditional jersey of any club. So, for example, if you take the jersey of Manly Seagulls, the traditional maroon with the white piping, that jersey says to you, Manly Warringah. By its very nature, that should bring everybody in the community together. Whatever your gender, whatever your race, whatever your sexual activities and preferences, the jersey on its own, pre-tampered, is actually the most inclusive thing. Right? And that comment got largely ignored on my social media, and I think that was the comment of the year. I do read your comments. Jamie Henselwood also says a huge disconnect from clubs to grassroots fans. Please tell me a bit more about that, Jamie. Try and give me some examples, because I'm interested. I hear that a lot, and I'm the mouthpiece. Darren King agrees with the Bundaberg comments. Back when I played in the 90s, the regional teams were very strong and put the fear into us. Now I took my under-12s Albany Creek team to Gladstone for a regional carnival. and we had to call the games off early because the regional teams were so undeveloped. They need programs in the regions big time, and talking to coaches, they just don't get the support. Whoever you talk to, mate, get them to reach out to me. I'll go out and see them. That's what I do. Okay? So the commercialisation of sport is taking us away from our communities. Did you know that in English Premier League soccer, the divorce rate of players once they retire, so players between 35 and 40 is something like 70%. So when we commercialise our sport, we also impact our players too, because we make them think they're bigger than they are. Also, when we commercialise it, we end up with a lot of charlatans popping up and making false claims and trying to jump on certain bandwagons. I mean, some of the things you see on social media about some things that people say they do, and they're quite clearly lies. If I could, I'd name them and call them out. They basically simply lie. There's also nations that have managed to get themselves either through politics or through bravado to get themselves to the top table of rugby league internationally by making up things. Johnny Michael is finally watching. The only thing is, for some reason, I can't invite you. So have a look at your settings, Johnny, please, because for some reason it's not letting me invite you. It might be because you've got a private account. See if you can unprivate it for a little bit. That might be the go. Yeah, honestly, I'm building up Johnny Dorr and Shane Harris. When you get to meet them, you'll be like, oh, geez, what was all this fuss about? I mean, they're just the worst blokes, you know what I mean? But they're involved in Ipswich State High, and I wanted to talk to you more about their progress. They're now in the national final. So, Johnny, change your Facebook settings to not be private, join the live again, and we should be able to get you on. I'm going to try and stay on until you reach that, because other people are coming on, and it gives me the option of bringing them on video. When you come on, it doesn't give me that option. On the podcast this week, the Rugby League Coach podcast, which I will release Thursday on YouTube, Spreaker, Spotify, the Apple thing, and iHeartRadio, I talk about Manly Seagulls and West Tigers, basket case 1 and basket case 2, club-wise. So, on this live, I want to talk about the Broncos and the Dragons, because I think both of them aren't basket cases, but they've been disappointed with their seasons when they reflect back on them, despite having so much promise. My thoughts on Kevin Walters. He has overseen an improvement. Whether you think Kevy's done it or not, how tactical he is, how tactical he isn't, yada, 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 he has overseen it. Now, many years ago, CEOs of companies, chair people of companies, used to get secretaries to do their typing because they didn't know how to do typing because they were never brought up doing that. Now, most CEOs and most chairs can type as well, so sometimes they may not share those responsibilities out. But 20 years ago, they used to devolve those responsibilities. Did that make them any less the boss because they couldn't type? So there was some comments attributed to Tyson Gamble recently where he said the captain was the brains behind the attack. To me, that's smart management for Kevy. Kevy has overseen improvement from wooden spooners to 14th to being on the verge of finals, to be a team that some people thought a while back were going to be Premiership contenders. I think it's a youngish side. I think there's still a few gaps in the roster. That can't be fixed overnight. Ben Eichen and the CEO are doing a great job fixing all that. But Rome wasn't built in a day. And Kevy got them on the verge of the finals. They were in the top 4 not so long ago. I don't think they dealt with the expectations very well. But that's something they'll learn from. You know the old adage, you need to lose a grand final to win a grand final? Well, maybe you need to lose a finals race before you win a finals race too. So, to me, it's all part of the learning curve of the Broncos. Anton Quinn says, sack him, meaning Kevy, and hire Paul Kent. He seems to know everything about rugby league. Paul Kent didn't write that, but yeah, I get your point. David Ponga. Kev deserves another go, that's for sure. It's been a dismal few years, but there were glimpses of a top 8 side this year. Unfortunately, the Bronx ran out of steam to push all the way into the finals. A few of the players need to own up as well. The future looks promising, though. Totally agree, bud. Totally agree. Stephen Savage, Brisbane with the big improvements in the 4. I brought up the 4. I've mentioned the 2 other clubs to you earlier. I talked about the Tigers and I talked about the Seagulls on the podcast. And you're right, they were the big improvers in that 4. Shane Spicer, I think a change of coaching style may be needed at the Tigers and Dragons, so I'll talk about the Dragons a bit soon. But Broncos just need to discover a thing called attitude. Defence is based on it, and their attitude is poor. That's one thing I think, mate, that there's a lot of players at the Broncos who possibly have been recruited for their attack and their defence hasn't been considered, or it's certainly getting exposed. What happens in the NRL and any high-level sport, opposition coaches look for weak shoulders of certain players, and no doubt they're getting targeted as the year goes on, and what the targeted has to do is adapt to that. So if a tackler's weak on his left shoulder, for example, and keeps getting exposed on that, well, the coaching staff need to work that out and try and improve that and make him aware, or make the player stand in a certain place so that he's not getting exposed. So this is the to and fro in, the back and forth that exists in the NRL. And you're right about the attitude, Shane. No question about that. Defence is an attitude. Paul Land, the series of great wins in the middle of the season showed the talent that his team have and the quality of coaching that Kevy brings to the club. The last few weeks have shown a shortfall of mental toughness among this young team, not a shortfall of fitness or skill. That's a very interesting take on it. You mentioned about Kevy's coaching. You know, it's not all about tactics, is it? A lot of it can be down to person management, man management. John Snell, I think the players believe their own hype after beating Para. Agreed. From then on, it was just a shit show. Don't know how you fall from top 4 out of the top 8 without some sort of player discontent. Do you think it was player discontent? Hard to say. They'd never admit it, would they? So only people who know inside. I will say this, a lot of people blamed Matt Lodge for things a while back. Have you seen how well Matt Lodge is going on at the Roosters? So sometimes you might have to look at what's going on around you rather than just blaming certain people all the time. Rich Ottergen. I hope I pronounced that, mate. Sorry, Rich. Kevy isn't to blame. They copped a deserved spray from Kevy and then say it was too harsh. What worried about me is not the spray, the fact that it got leaked. That's a problem. There's a problem with your organisation when that's happening. The players need to own up to those mistakes and acknowledge they're first-grade professionals on 6-figure salaries. See what I mean about fans thinking like this? And they deserve what they got. From being in finals contention to missing out altogether, that rests with the players' toxic attitude. In this case, the coach should be backed, but not players' attitudes. Great post, mate. Well done. I'm sorry if I butchered your surname, lad. Cameron Bostock, a mate of mine. Shane Andrews watching. I'll go back to this, right? Because finally, I've got somebody that can come on the live. So I've done it from my phone, so hopefully that'll give you an invite. Shane Andrew is Shane Harris, that is the assistant coach at Ipswich State High. I've sent you the request, mate, so hopefully that's working. Because I'm doing that bit off my phone. I've now sent you 3 requests. I'll keep going until Shane joins us. Told you, at least they can coach. Cameron Bostock. Kevy deserves at least another off-season to see if he can take this team to the next step. I have been really disappointed with the last 5 weeks, but need to remember how this team was going when they beat Para. Young players find it hard to stay up the whole year. That comes with experience. Look at Penrith in 2019. Missed finals with a talented young squad. Everybody said Cleary was the problem. Their next 3 years have been probably the most dominant in the NRL area. Great post, Cam. I know I'm your mate, but yeah, that's genuine, mate. That's really good. Well done. And it was reflected in likes and emojis. Shane Spicer does one of them emoji things. Honestly, Broncos finished dead last and this year fall short of making the finals, just missing out. yet they want to get rid of Kevy. Seriously shows that back of house needs a change. Kev has gone and taken a team that was a laughingstock of Brisbane to finals hopefuls. Yes, they just fell short, but come on, they have improved heaps, and in a business that demands a team like the Broncos to play finals each year, they did extremely well. The other thing, and I've mentioned this in post before, that the Broncos aren't the only show in town anymore. The Titans are in the comp. They've not won a comp since the Titans joined. Redcliffe are joining. The Cowboys are up there too. They've only won a few comps since the Cowboys came in. Now, the other thing is Sydney clubs have more of a stronghold up here, so all the best juniors, they have got more of a challenge than ever. And Cyril Connell's not around, is he, anymore? He was the man who used to nab a lot of them from various areas. Robbie Keenan has just written, no Carrigan, Herbie, TMM out for a big chunk at the back end. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to navigate some of the spelling errors when the typos. Pakes, few players still with very poor discipline. Flegler, I'm looking at you giving away too much yardage this season. Cobbo, and we've got this emoji. Young and not managed, maybe. Stag's missing since Origin 1. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I reckon that shot his confidence, mate. Bronx will be better for the run next year. Shane Andrew asked, where do requests go? I don't know, mate. I just requested you, and hopefully it should be in the corner of your video. Jamie Henselwood, Broncos only look bad in comparison to how high they got on with the Cowboys. Huge turnaround. And Robbie Keenan, TMM is Martin. Luke Pollock in response to Shane Spicer, but they collapsed big time and Kevy has to take some blame. I agree with that too. Pick the wrong players, for example. Broncos were going so well. I do have a thought that Kevy does change his team a bit too often. It reminds me of my old coach and assistant Brett Bevan used to make substitutions after 5 minutes after somebody made one error. Well, Kevy does that in the middle of the week. And then he also said, Luke, Corey Pakes at hooker was going so well, but then he brought back Jake Termin, who's possibly the world player in the whole league. I think he thinks the worst player. Benny Hassam, who's a massive contributor to the comments on my page, mate, you have got the honour of switching the subject from the Broncos to the Dragons, because I've put your quotes together. Broncos, I think they read their own press. They were winning games on the back of their defence, then that went out the window when they were getting the pats on the back. Interesting. It's also interesting how the mental dynamic can work. Then he talks about the Dragons. The forward pack were nearly Dad's Army, Burgess, Woods, etc. Lucky for them, Hunt could carry them so long. Big year from him. So now we'll talk about the Dragons. Mick Leahy just wrote, I don't feel the Dragons have improved under Hook. They are basically in the same space on the ladder they were with Mary as coach. The difference between them and the Broncos is the Broncos have some really good young forwards coming through. The Broncos should improve. The Dragons don't look to have any improvement in them. God help them if Ben Hunt gets hurt. The Dragons, for me, the big disappointment of the year. They were, because I thought they recruited well. Now, there is a thought now with the speed of the game that if you recruit some more experienced players that should affect them. I would counter that with, well, if the conditioning was right, it shouldn't be a problem. And their injury management and whatnot. So that's why they've been the biggest disappointments to me. And the other thing is they've not made the final since 2018. But on the flip, they've actually won more games than they did last year, so there has been a slight improvement in that sense, and the wins that they got would have got them in the finals most years. So like Benny said, the Dragons forward pack were nearly Dad's Army. AJ Carr, St. George Illawarra signed big, slow middle forwards years into the era of mobile packs, and 13s playing first receiver and earning the quick play the ball. They massively overachieved. Take Hunt out and they're very close to the bottom. Interesting take. So what you're saying is the recruitment was wrong. Please comment on that if you can. I'll keep this live going for as long as I keep getting comments. Chris Ferdinand's Dragons need Flanagan. What do you reckon to that? And then I've got some comments to make here from my research that I've been doing that, like I said, the Dragons have secured more wins than the previous year, but the club see it as a failure because they didn't make the finals. It can't be celebrated. They did recruit heavily in the off-season, players such as Moses Sully, Jaden Stewart and Francis Molo. Ben Hunt has obviously been excellent. George Burgess, Andrew McCulloch, Josh Maguire, Moses Mbai, Tautau Moga, Jack Bird and Aaron Woods. There were some good players there, isn't there? But there is a thought that the speed of the current game shone a spotlight on their ageing roster. And I think Hook probably needs to get in the finals next year to secure his job. There is something going around about Dean Young, as potential coach. The problem is there is a belief that he may have signed an extension of North Queensland, but what do contracts mean these days? Jamie, thanks for all your comments this morning. I think I might have missed a couple, Jamie. I'm sorry, but I've done my best. Any concern with the Broncos' spine next year? Do they need a more experienced 9 with Mam and Walsh so inconsistent? My concern with their spine is how much Kevy changes it. So they stockpiled a load of halves a few years ago. Sometimes halves can transform into hookers. Sometimes hookers can transform into 7s. You might be right about the hooker. I would have thought, but do you remember Appic, the fast fella from Penrith or wherever it was, played for him for a little bit. Was it Sagiaro? Was that the one I'm thinking of? I don't know if they should put more experience in there because Adam Reynolds is already there, because he could have fixed a lot of things if he wasn't out so much. I think that I tend to agree with this whole young squad thing. They obviously need to handle the mentality of the game a little bit better, because there is a definite connection with when they were top 4 and they beat Parramatta, that they thought that the competition was theirs. Nothing fails like success. You've got to treat the twin imposters of success and failure the same, and push forward and focus on your next action. I reckon I'm going to end the live there, guys. If there's any more comments that come through, please feel free to add them and we'll talk online. Look out for the Rugby League Coach podcast, which will come out tomorrow. And if you've got kids in Brisbane, in Sydney, in Melbourne, I'm doing clinics there. 5 of them in Brisbane, 1 in Melbourne, 1 in Sydney, and I'm also doing a UK tour, so I'd love to coach your kids. We've coached something like 1,500 kids, close to 2,000 now if you include schools this year and last, and I want to keep that going, because as we've said, there's some people not happy with the development they're getting. All the best. Thank you so much for your interaction. Thank you so much for watching and listening. My name's Lee, and it's been my pleasure to talk to you.